Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Tabletop Toki here, and in today's live stream, we're going to be talking about some of the best and worst floral themed games out there. So, an exciting list today of some of the games that I've played, some games that were recommended from the community, or other games that are well known and or less known floral themed games that I just happened upon. So I'm excited to jump in. If y'all have opinions, especially on some of the games that I don't have personal experience with, please let us know in the chat, or if you're watching in the future in the comments, if these are games that we should check out and what your opinions are on them. One of the things I love about doing these live is always seeing some of the live real-time reactions from y'all about some of these amazing games. And before we get started, I do want to say a huge shout out to our sponsor, Noble Knight Games. If there are any games here that you're interested in, new and old, Noble Knight has a really great selection of new and used games. And right now they actually have their spring sale, which I believe is somewhere in the realm of 10% off pretty much all of their different products. I know I just placed my order for this month with them and got some really great deals on some titles that I've been looking for, some that are a little harder to find, and some games that I'm just really excited to finally get my hands on and have in my collection. So if you want to check them out, Noble Knight has been a great sponsor to our channel. You can click the link down in the description for some really great sales this weekend during their spring sale, and any purchases you make using that link help out the channel. So thank you in advance to y'all for checking them out, and thank you to Noble Knight for being an awesome partner and sponsor of the channel. That being said, we're going to jump right in here with our very first game for stream, which is Haru Ichiban. This is a 2-player game from designer Bruno Cathala, where you are going to be competing to use the winds of spring to make the best arrangements of flowers in the pond. So one player will play as the yellow gardener, the other will play as the pink gardener, and essentially you'll have these flower tokens that you're flipping over with different values from 1 through 8, I believe. Based on who has the higher or lower, you'll be determined to be the senior or master and junior gardener, which will allow you to manipulate the board in different ways. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of games where you have this kind of like, okay, both simultaneously reveal and then resolve based on that. But I think that the powers in this game are really clever. There are definitely times where strategically you want to be the master gardener versus the junior gardener, or vice versa, because that determines turn order, but also how you can manipulate the flowers and place them down. So this is one that I have like sung its praises for a really long time. It's definitely up there on the list. I would say that overall, in general, just being really objective about the mechanics, it's a solid B tier. I lean slightly towards A, but I might be a little biased because it's a game that I've played for so long. So that is our first game on the list, which is Haru Ichiban. Okay, next up, we have Floral. This is one that I have not played, but it is for 1 to 5 players from designer James Newman. And it looks like we're planting flowers and fulfilling tasks by comparing our garden with our opponents. I really like the cover art. It also has a 7.0, which is pretty high, I would say, for some lesser known games. It only has 92 ratings. And it looks like it's best at 2. So this looks similar to some games like tiling, overlapping some different patterns. And it looks like it's a pretty small box, which I personally am intrigued by. Games that have these kind of like 6-grid card tiles, I tend to really enjoy. A couple that come to mind would be like Orchard, or I'm trying to think, Samurai Gardener. What is it called? Hokkaido and its predecessor. So this one does seem pretty interesting. I would say just based on the art from Anton Fiersick. I'm not sure if that's how that name is pronounced. And based on what I'm seeing here, it looks interesting. And the small box means I would definitely be interested in trying it out for sure. So it looks like you're fulfilling tasks from the center to score points. And then there are different things that you can do. Okay, so it looks like you can play hand cards from your hand to the center pool. So perhaps there are some multi-use cards there as well, which I also really enjoy. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and put Floral. It's solidly in the want to try. Again, small box game with the mechanics that I love, and potentially, does it say multi? Yeah, multi-use cards. You can also play it solo. This seems like a really fun one to try out. Blossoms is another 2-player game, and is not one that I'm familiar with. I had looked into it a while back. It looks like it's a push your luck game, where you're collecting different pots and then planting various different flowers in them. It looks like the heights of your flowers will score differently, or the different types of flowers. The art is really nice. We have some very creative shots here. The art is really nice, but I'm not sure that there's a lot going on here that sets it apart from other 2-player games that play in about 20 minutes. This one has closer to 1,000 ratings, and it's only rated a 6.0. And it looks like you can grow, cut, or use a special action depending on some tiles that you have. So it seems like a very kind of cut and dry type of game without a lot of really interesting interactive mechanics. So I'm going to put this one in not interested. Speaking of special tiles that you can use for powers, next up we have Lotus. So this game is a card game for 2 to 4 players. And it's about collecting different types of flowers, which will have different amounts of petals on them. So we have an image here. So you can see like this lotus flower needs 6 cards to complete it, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards to complete it. There are irises, which only need 3. I believe there are sakura blossoms, which need 5 to complete them. Yeah, so we have all different manners of flowers here. And on your turn, you're going to be drafting these and also drafting them, and collecting them, placing them out with bug tokens for area majorities when certain flowers score. And you can either take points or activate these special use tokens that will give you more powers throughout the game. So it's a delicate balance between taking points versus taking powers that can help you get more cards, play more cards, claim areas and majorities more, but again, at the cost of sacrificing some of those points. I think this is a very beautiful game. It's one that I played quite a lot earlier on, but as I've continued on, this has been one that I've let go of and haven't really returned back to. I think there's a little bit more complexity than it seems like there was with Blossoms, but it's a similar kind of design where it feels a little dated. It came out in 2016, which isn't super long ago, but especially with like the powers, it just feels kind of meh compared to some other smaller box card games. And the fact that the hard limit is 4 players versus like 5 or 6, I think definitely puts it down in a lower category for me overall. But we're going to put it at a solid C. Decent game, beautiful presentation, some great choices there, but I think compared to some of the games that have come out more recently of a similar nature, not a lot to write home about. And welcome those of you who are joining live. Thanks for being here. Hey, Chris. Hope you're having a great weekend. We're going to continue on now with Formosa Flowers, which is another 2 to 4 player game. It plays in about 15 to 30 minutes. This one, I don't know a whole lot about, other than it looks like the cards are based off of a Japanese card game set, Hanafuda. I'm not sure if that's the name of a specific game that you play with that or the set of cards, but I know that these cards are also used in Korea. They're like similar to the 52 standard card deck. I grew up playing a lot of games with them, or really just the main one was called Hato. These look a little different though than the cards that I usually see for Hanafuda, although we have like the cherry blossoms and I don't know what types of flowers these are. And then some of the cards will have animals and things. So it looks like this is a game with reimagined art based on some of these traditional games from potentially Japan, I'm guessing, since it's, or maybe not Japan. Let's see. Adapted and inspired by the traditional Japanese card game Hanafuda. Okay, so yeah, it is based on that. Timing of scoring is important. You're getting card sets and you're trying to obtain high points while scoring before other players leave the round. So there's a little bit of push your luck, it looks like, some set collection. And let's see, it says 59 ratings is a 5.9. I think I would be interested in trying this out. I haven't played like proper Hanafuda, I don't think, but I would imagine that it's similar to some of the elements in, again, the Korean kind of version using similar cards called Hwato. At least that's how it sounds a little bit, but that's more kind of like trick-taking set collection. I would definitely be interested to give this one a go, and I would be even more interested, I think, to compare it to actual Hanafuda if I was able to play that and try it out. I think exploring more of these like traditional games would be, it's something that I've had on my list to do for a long time, but I haven't had a really easy way into exploring that, especially because I know that at least a lot of the Korean versions of games that use these cards have a lot of like house ruling, or there's not like one standard set of rules that everybody agrees on. So even looking up rules for Hwato, there are many different versions online that are all different from the way that I was taught growing up. So if anybody has any suggestions for great resources for that, please let me know. Next up, we have Dandelions from All Play, formerly known as Board Game Tables. So this is a little area influence game where you're going to be moving your dice around and your little tokens around these different dandelion flower cards. I will say that this game's presentation is really, really stunning. And although it's got like a really clean, easy feel to it, quick to teach, quick to learn, I felt when I played it that there wasn't quite enough complexity there for what I would like to see in a game, which is a real shame because I felt like this one was right up my alley in terms of, again, the ease of learning, the ease of playing, and also the aesthetic overall. But yeah, it's really about just like rolling your dice, moving around, getting majorities on certain tokens. I don't think it was the worst game. Another limitation for me was that it's only 2 to 3 players for the gameplay. And I feel like games that are lighter like this, I typically like to have a little bit more flexibility with the player counts. So I think that this one for me would probably be somewhere around the C tier. I'm not the intended audience, maybe. It's for maybe a younger audience or people who like lighter games, but I do think that the presentation and the ease of learning relative to the weight of the game was pretty decent. So we'll leave that one there for now. Okay, and moving right along, we have our next game, which is A Gentle Rain. So this is a solo tile laying game, and believe it or not, I have not ever gotten to try this one out, which I don't know. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard a lot of people sing its praises. It plays in just about 15 minutes. Again, I do enjoy tile laying, but with a caveat, I typically enjoy games that utilize tile laying as a mechanic. I don't inherently like tile laying on its own, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure that I would like this one, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten to play it yet. But essentially you're putting them out, matching flowers, putting these flower tokens in between based on like, I think it's the number of matches that you have around it, and trying to get through. I've heard from a lot of people that it's more of like a puzzle than a game. And in my mind, that's also been a huge turnoff because for me, I do love doing puzzles. But in that case, I feel that I would rather just do a complex puzzle versus playing a game that's really just this quick little puzzle, if that makes sense. Again, if I hear differently or something, maybe I would be inclined to try it. But the fact that it's a solo game as well, it's not a game that somebody's going to bring and be like, oh yeah, let's play this together. Or let me show you this game that I love. And so it just hasn't ever hit the table for me or come up. So I am going to put this one in the not interested category. I don't necessarily think that I would hate it. But again, there's not a lot there that incentivizing me to try it. And I think at this point, it's been out for 4 years. They've had like a Target reprint. It's very accessible, very easy to get a copy. even on sale, and I just haven't felt compelled to. So I think I would be lying if I said that that's one that I really want to try. Tusty Musty, Tusty Musty. I still don't know how to pronounce the name of this game, but it's a pretty fun one. This is from Button Shy Games, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. Basically, this is all about the art of making floral arrangements to communicate a message. So what you're going to be doing is offering up these different cards, looking at them, selecting one to put face up or face down to offer to your opponent, kind of like such. And then you'll be creating like basically a bouquet of flowers that will score at the end of the round. Scoring conditions can be based on adjacency, based on whether they're face up or face down, the number of hearts on cards, interacting with other cards that you've collected throughout the round. It's a really quick and concise game. I do like this one quite a bit. It's very quick, easy, versatile. There are a couple of mini expansions that add like ribbons with extra score conditions or green cards, which score a little bit differently. And yeah, overall, just like a really quick, concise game with a little bit of bluffing and a little bit of set collection. This one really hits it out of the park for me. So I'm going to say that, again, pronunciation TBD, but this game is going to be solidly in the A category for me. Flowers is a game that I have not played, but I have played its predecessor, Mandala. I'm not sure if this is a direct sequel, but based on how the cards look and how the mat is laid out, leads me to believe, and from what I've played, it's very similar in spirit to Mandala, which is a 2-player game. However, Flowers is 2 to 4 players. So we have some cards that you're going to be laying out on different areas of the board here, based on different colors, and then the center buds of the lotus, which look like they trigger based on some certain things. So actually, let's read a little bit more here and see. So we need majorities through card play, and there's open, drafting, and set collection. We have the mandala flowers that we're going to be laying out. Okay. And you can play down cards of the same color to one of the flowers. You're looking for scoring triggers. So it seems very similar to Mandala. What I'm curious about is the fact that this game only has a 6.1 with 220 ratings. Mandala has a 7.5. Okay, but it also has over 6,000 ratings. So based on how the BGG rating system works, I think that makes a little more sense. And this is 2019. Flowers is 2024. So based on how much I enjoy Mandala, I think I would be interested in Flowers. I think part of the lower rating might be due to the fact that Mandala is a really clean 2-player game, and Flowers having 3 or 4 players might kind of offset that a little bit in terms of those majorities and make it feel less strategic. I just realized that Clemence France did the art for this game. Really interesting. That is not their typical art style. Okay, sorry. Sidetracked there. I think, again, based on how much I like Mandala, I would normally say that I'm interested in trying Flowers. But based on what I'm seeing here, I think I would probably end up playing it and just want to play Mandala instead. So we're going to put this one in not interested, unless I hear something to the contrary, saying like, oh, this is why it's good compared to Mandala. Back to the game that I have tried. Tulip Bubble is for 3 to 5 players, so quite a shift in player count compared to some of the other games that we've seen here so far. This is a game where we have this market of tulips that's going to be changing constantly. You're going to be bidding on like certain flowers, collecting them, which will change the market prices, and then selling them outright or selling them to specific buyers. I'm not a huge fan of these kinds of like market manipulation bidding games. I don't tend to do super well with them, and it's usually not my preferred style of game. But I will say that this one, I feel, does a really good job of packaging it all up very concisely and offering a lot of opportunities for strategy. The one thing about it is that it does tend to be a little bit on the longer side. 50 to 70 minute playing time is a bit longer than I would want to take playing a game similar to this. But I think overall it's of the games of that type, one of my favorites. So I know that's a little wishy-washy. I think we're going to go ahead and put this one in B tier. Again, I'm not the intended audience, but for how much I like it despite that, I think that speaks a lot to how solid of a design it is overall. Bloom is a roll and write game, our first one for this list. And so opposite or contrary to what I was saying about bidding and stock kinds of games, roll and writes are right up my alley. So this is a 1 to 5 player game published by Game Right Games. And it looks like you're going to choose a color and circle that number of matching flowers based on the dice that you roll. And it looks like you can try to go for a certain color or go for a mixed dozen. So a little bit of luck, set collection, rolling and writing. Let's take a look at the board here. Okay, so it looks like there are just different scores for the different types of flowers, perhaps. Interesting. And then you have your grid, and then there are the dice. So this most reminds me in terms of the packaging and in terms of the time and player count of another game from Game Right Games called Quicks, which I like quite a bit, but this seems a lot less strategic than Quicks. So I'm not sure that I would enjoy this one, and I think I would probably just prefer to play Quicks over this. So we're going to put this one in the not interested. Oh man, this doesn't bode well. It seems like I have a real bias against floral games. Cottage Garden is up on the list next from designer Uwe Rosenberg. This is one of the like 3 trifecta Cottage Garden, Indian Summer. I forgot what the third one is called, but of the 3, this is the one that I have played. It was released in 2016, and it follows with a lot of Uwe's games in implementing some polyamino placement with those different tiles that you're placing out on the board and scoring based on like the different pots that you can place in your garden, etc. So I will say again, I don't enjoy games that are just tiling, but I do enjoy games like this where tiling is a small part of a bigger picture game. However, having played Cottage Garden, there was nothing here that really gripped me. It plays 1 to 4 players, 60 minutes. Again, a little longer than I would want for a game of this weight. But I think beyond that also, there wasn't anything with the mechanics that felt really new and novel that said like, hey, this is a polyamino game that you're going to want to keep in your collection. The game that comes to mind comparing it most closely is Queens, which I talked about in, was it last month's live stream? Maybe, where we talked about bees. Yeah, this game. It has a very similar feel to Queens, but I like Queens a lot more. It's got similar elements of drafting polyaminos, but then you're also drafting tiles to place on top of them. So you have like tokens and tiles, different scoring abilities. And so for me, Cottage Garden was just kind of meh in comparison, especially knowing that I had another game or shortly after had played another game that was similar to it that I liked a lot more. So Cottage Garden for me is actually going to go with the D tier. Not a lot to write home about there, unfortunately. Gift of Tulips is a game that came out a little bit more recently in 2022. This is a set collection game where you're going to have a high amount of player interaction, and it plays 2 to 6 players in about 20 minutes, although in my experience, the game goes quite a bit longer than 20 minutes, I think, every time we had played it. A significant degree more. So the concept of this game is really interesting because you can actually give away tulips to other players in order to increase your score in some ways, versus just keeping them for yourselves. And the entire game is kind of based around that mechanic of gifting away certain tulips versus keeping them in your supply. I really love the presentation of this one. I loved that it had this unique take on not really semi-co-op, but some incentive to work a little bit cooperatively. However, I felt that it was, because of that, in some ways frustratingly balanced, meaning that it was always clear when it was better to give tulips away to certain players versus keeping them yourselves. And because of that, in every game we played, even with people who had vastly different play strategies, our scores were always neck and neck, and not necessarily because it felt like any one of us was really having a better strategy than the other players. The game just kind of naturally lent itself out to balancing out the scores of all the players if you were playing based on the mechanics you were given. Because nobody's going to like give tulips to the player who's in the lead for a certain type of card or what have you. So this one for me was kind of a huge miss. It's a game that, like, even if somebody had it available, I don't know that I would agree to play it. I don't know if this is a little mean, but I think that Gift of Tulips goes to the F tier for me. Again, really cool concept, great presentation, some elements that I should really like, but it completely fell flat. And definitely beware of finicky flower values. The whole game kind of felt finicky, if I'm being honest. It's one of those where we kept going back and I kept saying, like, we must be playing wrong. There must be something I'm missing. Had other people verify the rules because it just was that off the entire time we played, every time we played. So after giving it quite a few plays in the first couple of weeks of getting it, I did end up letting this one go. Gartenbau is from 2022 as well. This is a 2 to 4 player game, 30 to 60 minutes. And let's take a look together because this is one that I haven't gotten to try. So it looks like there's a rondelle, some tile placement, and pattern building. We're going to play and lay tiles in a tableau to meet growing requirements of drafted flowers. So we have, 3 layers of tiling. Excuse me? That sounds interesting. I was just going to say with queens, like tiles on tiles is something I really enjoy. But there were 3 layers. Okay, we need to see a picture. Interesting. Okay, so it looks like they're overlapping cards and then tiles you lay on top of them. And this rondelle is this flower here. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It looks very convoluted, but maybe it's not as bad as it looks. I do like the cover. I'm not sure that I like the overall aesthetic of how it goes with the tiles. Like, it does look very busy, but I do like the idea of tiles on tiles on tiles. Okay, but these tokens look like resources, not tiles. So is it just 2 different types of tiles that lay on top of there? Curious and curiouser. I am very intrigued by triple tiling. Okay, so I think based on that alone and the playtime of 30 to 60 minutes, this is definitely one that I would be interested in trying out. For better or worse, I'm not sold on the fact that I would love it, but I do think that that sounds like a very interesting concept. And again, has a lot of elements that I am intrigued by. So we'll put that in want to try. Stock Exchange is another one that I haven't gotten to try. It is 2 to 5 players, 45 minutes. And you're managing a stock portfolio, growing your flowers and your profits. So going back to what I had said about Tulip Bubble, not necessarily my cup of tea, being a primarily economic game and looking at like a lot of market manipulation. So let's see. So you're planning investments, surrounding flowers to harvest value, trading your stocks, and then collaborating your opponents to grow shared investments or outmaneuver them and cause their favorite flowers to wither. So it sounds like a pretty mean game. Oh, this is interesting with these little tiles kind of funneling down. Let's see, what does that say? Oh, and surrounding tiles. Okay, interesting. I'm not sure on this one, to be honest. Let's see, 2 to 5 players, 45 minutes, and it has a 6.3 with 296 ratings. So it seems like people like it quite a little bit, but it also looks very expensive for what it is. And it's got a 1.58 weight, which doesn't really mean much based on BGG ratings. I would say that like if somebody really spoke highly of this game, I would be open to playing it, but there's nothing here that makes me feel like, yeah, I would love to play this one. Really need to like find a copy. So we're gonna put this in not interested. All right. Moving right along. Hey Drew, good to see you. Long time no chat. We have Petraore next. So this is a game for 1 to 4 players. 20 to 80 minutes seems a little crazy. I'm not sure where they're getting the 20 minutes from. It's definitely, even solo, a little longer than that, I think. But this is a game that is based around some area, majority, and influence. So essentially, you are going to be using different weather cards to manipulate these clouds, which have rain droplets, and then planting your drops of water on certain flowers to grow them, which can trigger different scoring objectives, etc. Based on the cards that you play, the weather action will allow you to manipulate the raindrops and clouds in certain ways, but they'll also allow you to vote on the weather for the end of the round that will change the state of the board overall. Let me see if I can find a picture of that wheel to show here. I think that this game is really gorgeous. Area, influence, and majority are not necessarily something that I am a huge fan of, but I love the multi kind of planning of my weather cards right now get me this action, which is important, but also allow me to vote for the weather at the end of the round, which I can then use to manipulate these different things. I think as well, this game is a really great solo game. It takes some of the uncertainty of the player versus player interaction and trying to get area majorities and turns it into a solo puzzle because the like automated deck is kind of programmed and you get to see a little bit ahead. So this is one that I've really enjoyed playing solo. It's one that I've enjoyed showing other people. I do think that after years of playing it though, it has lost some of its charm. Part of that might be my bias as well because it has several expansions and upgraded pieces, which just feel like too much to keep up with. I do like the Flowers expansion because it adds a 5th player without adding too much more complexity. But after receiving the other 2 expansions for the game and never touching them, this is one that I finally decided to let go of from my collection. So I would say that this is probably a B for me. Again, it's lost some of its sparkle over the year, but I still think it's a great, well-designed game. And the solo mode especially is really, really fun. Herbaceous Sprouts is another 1 to 4 player game, 30 minutes. It's based on Herbaceous, which is a card-based game. But I've heard that Sprouts, which is the dice version of that game, is a little bit heftier, which I'm surprised by. I have never played Herbaceous, but I did play Herbaceous Sprouts. And at least in the solo game, it really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. It was one of those games where the game just kind of played itself. Based on the die rolls that I got, I didn't feel like there was a lot of decision making or strategy, kind of hedging my bets one way or the other. It was just like, oh, these are my results. This is the most optimal way to get points based on these things. So I just kind of lay it out, roll the dice again, put my stuff out, roll the dice. And then like after a couple times of that, the game was over. It might be different in a multiplayer setting, but based on what I had seen, I didn't have any incentive to really try it out with any other players. So for me, this one was a huge miss. Oh man. Again, I hate to say it, but I think for me, I actively disliked this one so much that even if someone was excited to play it, I would probably say no, thank you. I know that my experience is very different than some other people who love Herbaceous and love Herbaceous Sprouts. So, you know, take my opinion with a grain of salt, but this one was not for me. Again, nothing super novel or exciting in terms of innovating on kind of some mechanics that I've seen before. And in terms of like the reward of feeling like I had strategy that I could implement and seeing my score go up in relation to that didn't really feel apparent either. So for me, it was a miss in both categories. And those are the 2 things I really look for in games. Floriferous is of a similar nature to herbaceous, if I'm correct. Maybe actually, let me check. Let's see. They're both from Pencil First Games. Okay. And it looks like the same design team. So I have not played Flouriferous. Again, I've heard good things, but I had also heard good things about Herbaceous and Herbaceous Sprouts. So I'm not sure on this one. Let's take a look and see. I've heard that it's about a similar weight. And it looks like days, 5 turns each day, or 3 days, 5 turns each. Step through the garden, pick up a flower, and then score points. So it seems like pretty quick and easy set collection. You can play it solo, open drafting. It looks great. It sounds great. But based on my experience with Herbaceous Sprouts and what I've seen of Herbaceous, again, I think that if I wanted to try this one, I would have at this point, especially since there is a solo mode. So we're going to put this one in the... I don't know. I almost want to try it just to see and compare based on Herbaceous. I think unlike some of the other games in the not interested, if this one was available or someone did bring it to try out, I would be more inclined to give it a go, especially because it is so quick, 20 to 30 minutes. So I think we'll put this one in the want to try. I'm just curious enough to see how it would go. Lacuna is a 2-player game for plays in about 10 to 15 minutes. And game that comes to mind that this is most similar to in my mind is Bosque, which is a tree game where you place out different trees and then score them based on kind of like their adjacencies, different lines of trees, etc. Lacuna is interesting because it is placed out, there's no grid, it's just a board and you're measuring from these different tokens that you're placing down, and then the flowers that you're placing down. And basically you're creating different areas, trying to get majorities where certain flowers are closest to a majority of your tokens, I believe it was. It seems like a really cool concept, beautiful idea, abstract game. I love abstract games, just throwing that out there. This ain't it though. I felt like a lot of the things that I didn't like about Bosque, which again is the game in my mind that it feels most similar to, were present here, where it just felt kind of very, I wouldn't say arbitrary, but the way in which you created areas on the board just didn't feel great for like area control or area influence. And I think in this case, not having a set grid of like these things score here, 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 just trying to gauge the distance between tokens and like the metal pieces that you're putting out, those pillars or what have you. It just felt very fiddly. The word that comes to mind is like nonsense. I think it has a great presentation, but in actual implementation and scoring, it just didn't really kind of pull through in terms of being a really enjoyable experience, or again, feeling really rewarding where it felt like you could really get ahead or have cool combos or like strategic moves or bluff and fake out your opponent. Like everything is out there for everybody to see. And I think in this case, it didn't really lend itself well to feeling like you could really get ahead or have some like long-term types of strategies. It was mostly just, okay, this is the best move. Okay, and you're gonna go there because yep, that's the best move. So this one for me as well, I'm probably gonna put in the F tier. It's a game that I would not play even if somebody was excited to play it. Unfortunately, I did not have a great experience with it. The Little Flower Shop, the dice game, is the dice version of the Little Flower Shop, which I think in the tier list I have the picture of the Little Flower Shop. But I'm going to choose to talk about the dice game because I actually did get to play this for the first time just this past weekend. This is a similar kind of game as what we've been talking about, 1 to 4 players, where it's set collection and dice rolling, flower themed, obviously. But this one tickled me quite a bit. Basically, you are rolling dice and re-rolling to get different combinations of flowers and vases, which will allow you to then draft tiles once you're out, and then use those combinations to fulfill the tiles. You can also trade in flowers for money or wild tokens or vice versa, using money to buy those assets and kind of complete these different goal tiles, which you'll set on your shelf. It's interesting though, because you don't inherently or immediately have to complete a tile if you take it. And the different tiles that you take will have vastly different kind of objectives in terms of the number of flowers, color of flowers, vases. You can buy extra ribbons for extra points, and you won't necessarily finish all of your different tiles throughout the game. I would say that the one thing about this game that I wasn't a huge fan of was this initiative die, this yellow die down here. I don't know if you can see it or if I'm blocking it, but there's a yellow initiative die that you will be rolling. Here we go. That's a better picture of all the dice, which determines who gets to go first each round. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I feel like there was maybe a little more strategic way that you could kind of program that in. But I did enjoy the fact that regardless of if you go first, the way in which you get to draft your tile first is by how many dice you lock in, because you can choose to lock in 1, 2, or I believe 3 dice, and you can pay to lock more. So I really liked that about this one. Kind of like weighing the, okay, do I try to roll to get better results, or do I want to lock in early and get the tile that I want? So I thought that was interesting, and locking in earlier versus later also gets you different bonuses for selecting. I believe in a 2-player game, it's like you get a $1 bonus or a $3 bonus if you lock in later. So this one, surprisingly, despite being dice-based, set collection-based, and, you know, kind of a lighter game that plays in about 20 to 30 minutes, I really enjoyed this one. Again, I haven't played the Little Flower Shop, just the regular game, but the dice game was actually more fun than I expected. I wouldn't say that it's like the best game ever created, but I do think that locking in dice early and it being a quick 6 rounds, I would say that it's solidly in the B tier for this list. Trellis is a 2 to 4 player game for 20 minutes. Seems like a lot of these kind of fit that mold. This is one that I haven't tried. So it says we're going to add tiles to grow vines and race to bloom all of your flowers first. Interesting. Now this one has a very different aesthetic than a lot of the other games with or floral themed games on this list. It's got darker tiles, which you can kind of see here, which is kind of intriguing, but it also looks very messy. Trying to keep track of like the tiles and the flowers on them. But let's see. You can plant a tile on the table, growing the size of your garden. Once that's placed, then automatic blooms will happen. Okay. And then if you place a flower claiming a vine that hasn't bloomed yet, the vines of the same color on neighboring tiles will automatically bloom. All right. I'm going to be honest. Just even reading that, it sounds messy. And it looks kind of messy. It might be a great game. I might have no idea, but based on what I'm seeing and reading, it doesn't seem like a great time. This to me is very overwhelming, not in a great way. And not because it looks like there's a lot of strategy. It looks like just visually trying to discern what's happening and notice which ones are adjacent or which ones have bloomed, yes or no. I don't know. This one's a hard nope for me, I think, in the not interested category. So there's Trellis, but again, I would be interested to see what people think of this one if they have played it, and whether it's as bad as it kind of looks in terms of that visual complexity and how challenging it is to really discern what's going on during the course of the game. And hi, Chewy, welcome. Planted by Phil Walker Harding and Plantopia by Daryl Chow. Oh, those are great call outs. We need you in our Discord so you can share the games ahead of stream. All right, so Windmill Valley is another flower themed game. Tulips, as with Tulip Bubble. So we have, this is from designer Danny Garcia. We're going to be planting tulips, building windmills, and offering the most valuable selection of bouquets. So this is probably, of the games on the list that I have played at least, This is definitely the chunkiest one. It's from Board and Dice. That's one of the publishers. One of the things that I love about this game is the action selection wheel. What? Here we go. Beautiful. Love to see it. Not only do you have wheels that are going to intersect at different points, because one wheel has 5 slots and the other has 6, but you can also upgrade your wheels and get different combos, and certain ones will trigger off of the other side triggering. In addition to that, there are a lot of different fun cards that you get to play around with as well. Let me see if I can find some good pictures. Yeah, so there are different, let's see how big this image will get and if I can manipulate it around. So you have like your different wheel upgrades. Oh gosh, nope, too big. You have different cards that will get you end game scoring versus in-game. Different objectives. You also have the main windmill board where there's a little bit of area control where you're placing out your windmills, and then getting different bonuses based on like the areas that they're adjacent to. There's this little tulip market, which was my least favorite part of the game, but basically you can move your tokens around, and based on how many people are at a certain section of the market, you can get certain incentives and certain amounts, mostly like tulips and things like that. And then you also have to collectively manage I believe they're like the levees of the water level rising and falling, which determines how far your wheel will spin each turn. So that was pretty interesting and fun. And then there are all these little like mini games that you can play with the market, with these like shipping areas, and then with like completing your like actions and things based on like when you go out in the round up here. There are just so many little things that work together really, really well in this game. And again, just this action selection wheel. Y'all, I don't know if I have a thing for wheels. Yeah, kind of like Tolkien. I couldn't wrap my mind around that wheel, but other games that have action selection wheels like this, Praga Kaput Regni, I don't know, I'm all about it. So this one felt really fun. And then getting your tulips, planting them, going for rows of all the same, all different, triggering little bonuses as you're planting your tulips, triggering endgame scoring as you're putting out your different windmills. There's just a lot to love here, and it all works together really well. My biggest criticism of the game is I hate this freaking board. I'm not a huge fan of when there are cards that you're setting out, having like dedicated spaces on the board that you have to put them. I just find that it's not the greatest. It's not my preference, especially for flexibility of like being seated at different like types of tables and things. Like luckily my game room, I have a huge table. We can do whatever. But then playing this in person, like at a local game store where the tables were a lot more narrow, it was just not the best experience in terms of like making sure that everybody had enough room for all of their things and we could position things so that everybody had access to them. And then like this board here, I'm gonna be honest, not a fan of the aesthetic, and I think it could have been much smaller and accomplished just the same, because like the icons themselves, if you can see on here, it's probably gonna be way too big if I blow it up, but the icons on here are so small relative to the size of like the plot. And it's not particularly great to look at. So I don't know why it's so big. But that's a very minor detail, and it has nothing to do with the mechanics of the game, just like the look and feel and play of it. I will say that this one gets really high marks from me all around. It was really great. I'm not sure relative to other games of this weight and like style of game that it's a favorite of mine, but I do think that it's very solidly in the A tier as a really great game. Some really fun, like I said, mini games, some decent player interaction in terms of like where people are in the shop and markets versus the water levels and how far forward your action wheels are turning each round. And again, just action selection wheel. I don't know. sticks in my brain. I really, really love that for determining your actions and building a little engine. So that's Windmill Valley. Botanicists is a 2 to 4 player game. This one a little bit on the heavier side as well. It looks like 45 to 60 minutes. I have not played this game, but it looks like we'll be creating a botanical garden. You're an aristocrat in the 19th century, competing for best action spots. Unique selection mechanism. What is it though? I wish I knew. The rest of it's just the same thing in German, so it doesn't elaborate on what that is. Let's see. Action, drafting, grid coverage, grid movement, modular board. I wish I knew what this secret unique selection mechanism was, because that sounds intriguing, but who knows what it actually is. Okay, let's take a look. So it looks like we have quite a big variety of cards. It looks like you have your own little personal board where you're planting things, different flowers and what have you. Does this board give us more insight into the action selection? Not so much from what I'm seeing. Okay, interesting. Why is there Dinogenics in the background? Or no, Dungeon Legends. Okay, maybe this was like a demo. Let's see. So I'm not sure that I'm completely sold on the aesthetic. It looks like there are some interesting things going on with your personal board and like different rows triggering different things. Maybe there are some fun combos that you could set up, but I'm not hearing that in the description. And with how cryptic they were with like the promise of this mystery action selection, I don't know, this looks a little messy to me. I'm intrigued by that, but there's not enough here to warrant me being like, oh yeah, but I need to know what that is. Got a 7.4, 1.1 thousand ratings. I think this one is skewing towards the not interested. If someone were to bring it and give it really high marks and, you know, sing its praises and maybe elaborate a little bit more on what this unique selection mechanism is, I would be open to playing it, but it's not one that I'm going to go out of my way to like chase after and look after. And I think it's slightly towards the not interested side. So that's where we'll put that. Okay, Flourish. Our first game that plays up to 7 players, 1 to 7 players, 20 to 60 minutes. So this is where you're trying to create the most beautiful garden. It looks like it's drafting. It's cooperative. I was not aware of that. Okay, there's a strategy and cooperative game mode. Interesting. Okay. I was like, that is not something that was on my radar. So this is one that I haven't played. It looks like you are drafting cards and creating a grid, and then placing out tokens based on what you're getting here, getting different rewards. Let's see. Okay, so there are different types of flowers that you are collecting, and in terms of the actual different structures that you can then place on there, or maybe that's just a deluxe component, I'm not sure. But then it looks like you're ultimately creating a grid of flowers, maybe a 3x3 grid based on what I'm seeing here. Although it's hard to tell because a lot of these are like close-up product shots of things. Okay, maybe larger based on player count, or this is where we're drafting from. It looks like 3x4. Okay, interesting. Or 4x3, I guess whichever works. So I do like the fact that it plays 1 to 7. However, I will say that it looks similar to a game that we talked about last month, which is Village Green. And Village Green only plays to 5, but it is one of my favorite games where you're also drafting cards with different kinds of like garden imagery on them. But the thing I love about this one is, as I said last month, you're also drafting these scoring cards as well. So it's a 4x4 grid in totality. And I think between this and Flourish, because I remember when it came out, I thought, oh, that looks interesting. It looks very similar to Village Green. And I can pretty confidently say, based on what I'm seeing, that I think I would still love Village Green more. And because they're so similar, I would probably prefer to play it every time, which is why I haven't tried Flourish. That might be a mistake on my part. Who knows? Maybe Flourish is great. But I think just for that reason alone, it's one that I'm less inclined to want to try. And to end things out, we have Botanic. I think that's how it's pronounced. I've heard some people get upset over some people saying Botanic or something. I don't know. But Botanic makes sense to me because it is a floral plant-based game. So this is a 2-player game. It plays in about 30 minutes. Published by Space Cowboys, at least here in the US. And essentially you are creating a garden by drafting certain tiles away from your opponent. So the way that that works is, let me see if I can find a good picture of the main tile board here. You have this center tile board that you're drafting from. Here we go. And essentially you can play tiles to your side if they have a matching color or shape to the center tile or both. And you can also play any amount of tiles to that center row. And what that can do is potentially unlock tiles on your side or your opponent's side once they have no matching qualities to the single tile on your or your opponent's side. Once you release those tiles, they then get added onto your like big mechanism network of pipes and plants and flowers. And essentially you're trying to create the best network of like matching colors, of having the most flower blossoms that are actually connected to your network, and then having, I think I said color adjacency already. I'm looking for a picture of, that's not a great picture of all the things. And then scoring through those different means. So here we go. Here's an example of what that final scoring could look like based on your network and making sure that they're actually all connected as well. I really love delayed gratification in board games. I think that it's like one of my favorite things. So games like Hats, Gugong, etc. I've said it a million times. Botanic does that really, really well with having to program out your tiles and then placing them to the center to release the tiles into your like network so that you can finally place them. And then the timing of that is really important as well, so you can actually get them connected and get them positioned in such a way that they'll actually optimize your scoring for the end of the game. So this one for me is just really brilliant, easy to learn, easy to teach with like, does the color match? Does the shape match? Here's where you can put that tile. Here's when you get the tile. But in terms of the finesse in timing and ensuring that you can get the tiles that you want while also managing what your opponent is doing, because you always have to watch if you're releasing your opponent's tiles as well. It is just a really spectacular game overall. I really, really love this one. I don't know if that came across in the brief time of me talking about it, but I would say that what a great note to end on. Botanic is S tier for me. It's a really great one. If you like 2-player tiling games, definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it. And there you have it. There is our tier list for May, featuring all flower themed games. There are definitely some games that are more plant-based, but I wanted to try to keep it somewhat concise here for y'all today. If you have other recommendations for flower themed games that you think myself or members of our community would enjoy, please let us know in the chat or leave them in the comments. I always love hearing all y'all's recommendations about some of these games and just being able to explore games together. There are so many amazing ones out there and everybody has different tastes. So again, this tier list is based on my ratings of these games. So take it with a grain of salt, but hopefully I've given enough information and shown enough through BGG and the pictures for y'all to make your own conclusions about which games you might be interested in. But yeah, that being said, again, just one more big shout out to our sponsor, Noble Knights. They are having their spring sale right now. A lot of these games that we talked about here are likely on there or will be. You can add them to your want list to get notified as soon as they come in stock. And if you use the link in the description, it does help out the channel directly. So appreciate y'all checking them out and finding some great deals on some games and supporting the channel while you do so. But yeah, that's about all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed the video or the stream, thanks again so much for joining. If you don't mind clicking the like button and subscribing if you haven't already, it helps the channel, helps these games get out to a wider audience of people who might enjoy them as much as I do and maybe you do. So thanks again so much for being here, and we will see you next time. Bye.